Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. We are talking about cat naps today, and this idea of, is it okay if my baby only cat naps? And what is a cat nap? And what in the world is ideal when it comes to naps? Now, I feel like naps, there's just so much misinformation out there, right? And so much of it is said really confidently, like it's super evidence-based, and most of it's not. So I don't blame you if you are confused or overwhelmed or feel like there's this perfect nap that you have to achieve, and maybe your baby's not fitting into that mold, or maybe your toddler's not fitting into that mold. So let's unpack this a little bit on this episode. First of all, what is a cat nap? There's not really a real definition here. Like, a cat nap is a short nap, right? And what that means, to a certain extent, depends on who you're asking. To me, a cat nap is, maybe a 20-30 minute nap, but that's not set in stone. And so there isn't this uniform definition of a nap that's short. And a lot of times when parents also, they hear short nap, they also think that means too short, which is not at all what I'm saying here, right? But shorter naps can be called cat naps. And, you can think of it loosely as a 20 or 30 minute nap if that's helpful to you. Now, are cat naps bad, right? Are they unhealthy? Are they too short? And largely speaking, no, right? Most babies who are napping multiple times a day, so think your newborns or your younger babies that are napping 3 or 4 times a day, and sometimes even your older babies that are napping twice a day. Most babies, their naps are going to be somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour and a half. So 30 to 90 minutes. And so you can see, right? A cat nap is right there in that range. That's a perfectly normal nap. Most babies who are taking multiple naps aren't going to have these really, really long naps. It just doesn't make sense. They don't necessarily need a really long nap. They are taking multiple naps. So they're spreading their daytime sleep over more naps. So it makes sense that those naps could in theory be shorter. Another piece of this is just your baby, right? Some babies naturally nap much longer, and some babies naturally nap much shorter, and that's just part of who they are as a sleeper. And that can change over time, of course, but also can just be a trend for them. I know some families whose babies always had shorter naps and continued that right up to when they're a toddler napping once, and they're doing fine on a 90-minute nap, which is a little shorter than average for one nap for, a younger toddler. And that's just what their baby needs or their toddler needs. Same goes with, if you have a baby that sleeps longer at night, they might sleep less during the day. And if that less amount is spread over a few naps, right? Again, we're going to get shorter naps, and that's okay. So it's normal to have shorter naps. Some babies trend much more firmly towards shorter naps. And also, it's normal for some naps to be shorter and some naps to be longer. And to find these rhythms where you might notice that, the third nap is always really short, or your first nap is always really short, right? So kind of thinking about patterns and that not all naps are going to be the same length, and that's really, really normal. Another piece is how does your baby seem when they wake from the nap, right? So if your baby's waking and they're smiling and they're happy and they seem really well rested, then that was a good amount of sleep, right? If your baby wakes and they seem really tired and like they could have used more sleep, then maybe we need to think about how can we extend that nap and help them get a bit more sleep. So short naps are healthy and they're wonderful and they're fine and they're normal. And of course, as with everything in sleep, there's some context and nuance there. And whenever I'm talking with families about short naps, it always comes back to like, okay, but is there an ideal nap length, right? Like, is there an amount we should be aiming for? And I think kind of tease out from what I was just saying that the answer to that is no, right? The ideal nap length depends on your baby and their overall rhythm and their needs for that day. And there's going to, often be some fluctuation from day to day. So it's not like all babies need an hour nap to get a restorative rest, or a 2-hour nap, or a 90-minute nap, or whatever number is being thrown around, because we hear this so much, right? Like, you have to have an hour nap or it's junk sleep. You have to have a 90-minute nap or it's junk sleep. Or for toddlers, if they're not getting a 2-hour nap, it's not enough. And it's like, sleep is much more individualized than that. So there isn't an ideal nap length. There might be an ideal amount of daytime sleep or nap length for your little one in a given phase that you notice works really well for them. And that's where you need to look at patterns and figure out what works well for your baby. I know that that's going to change, right, over time. So, cat naps, totally normal. Short naps, totally normal. And whether or not, like, it's something that you should try to extend or try to get more sleep really depends on your baby. So I hope you find this helpful. I hope it helps you stress a little bit less about, your baby taking shorter naps, and that they're not necessarily something we have to fix or is a problem, right? It's just a normal piece of napping. And the only time we should maybe fiddle with things is when we're clearly seeing from your baby that those naps aren't working for them and, they're not getting enough sleep with them. And then that's a sign to do some experimenting, right? How can we shift their nap schedule or support them to get a bit more sleep? And it's a whole different topic for another day. But otherwise, just lean into the short naps and know that it will change and that it's normal. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.